welcome to the African History Notebook. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Albert Winters. The African History tonight I'm going to talk about some of the ancient people, but I also have a real treat. I'm very excited. Dr. David Imhotep, he's going to be on the show tonight, and he's going to talk about his new book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. This is very exciting to me because Dr. Imhotep is making the black community very excited because of the fact that he's presenting so much evidence for the first time. You know, we've had Ivan Van Sertima, he talked about the Olmecs, and he talked about the Malians who came from Mali and settled in Mexico and Central America. What Dr. Imhotep is going to talk about is those early Americans here, those Americans, those Africans who came here 60, 30,000 years ago. So I'm very excited. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get a little down, talking about some of the African communities in the Americas that I haven't talked about already. And then probably around 20 minutes after the hour, on into the second half hour, we're going to talk to Dr. Imhotep and let him tell us about his book and make us more aware of it. As I talked earlier, in terms of this particular point, is bring on Dr. Imhotep. Dr. Imhotep, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, how you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. How are you?
Oh, just fine. Thanks a lot for coming on, Dr. Imhotep. I know you've been engaged in a lot of speaking engagements lately, and I've heard that you've been going around the country, telling people about your book. And I'm very glad that you could take time to share with us some information about your book. And the reason
could I say one thing first?
Yeah,
I'd like to thank Brother Heru Anu for making this show possible. Without him, you and I wouldn't be here. And also, Dr. Winters doesn't talk much about himself, but this guy is on a par with about close to
Check out the deal. The man's writings are as on point as they are. His references, his information, his historical point of view are right on line with his as well. So this fellow is far underappreciated and unknown in this country. And I hope he talks about his two books he's written. And I just can't say enough about how incredible researcher is and how much he's helped me in the past. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Imhotep. You're a great scholar and researcher yourself. In fact, I'm so proud and excited about the fact that you're the first person that I know, and I will have to check the records, that you're the first person to ever get a PhD in Afrocentric studies. A lot of people may have gotten in African history or Afro-American studies, but Dr. Imhotep, he has a PhD. That's the highest degree you can get in Afrocentric studies. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would say first that I have the first PhD specializing in ancient African history. Okay, about myself, my book, first of all, I'd like to say that historictruth.info is my website, and you can go to Facebook and add me onto your Facebook information. My PhD, why did I get that PhD? I wanted to fight historical inaccuracies, and especially white supremacy in academia. With a PhD degree, that should open the door, as I said, should open the doors that some people cannot get into, so that I can fight them as far as articles and radio shows like this, television shows, especially articles from magazines that are inaccurate in fighting, I would say, Hollywood, and putting out garbage movies showing that the ancient Egyptians were anyone but Africans, and that they were not the Antichrist or these horrible people as some of the movies portray them to be. They're anything but those people. So,
okay, that's great. Dr. Imhotep, what began your interest in writing your book, The First Americans Were Africans? Where does that idea originate?
It's an extension of my dissertation, some parts of it, a little part of it, and that is the little people, the Twa, the Anu, the Khoi, the Khoikhoi, and the Khoisan. They were the first people to come over to the Americas. So I wanted to expand that in another media that was not appropriate for my dissertation. And Dr. Ivan Van Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus, was written 35 years ago. And since then, much new evidence has been uncovered. So with those two and a few other things together, putting before you know it,
I was on my way to writing this book.
That sounds quite interesting. You mentioned Dr. Van Sertima. What other researchers influenced you and maybe made you decide on writing this book, especially because of the fact that it seems as though you're taking an entirely unique approach?
Well, Dr. Van Sertima wrote that Africans came before Columbus, and I'm writing that the Africans came before even the Indians. They're the so-called Indians.
Another book I would say that influenced me was Dr. Barry Fell's book, America B.C. He was a Harvard professor who wrote some fantasy mythology about how the first Caucasians came over 1700 B.C. and left a colony. Some Scandinavian king left a colony of people and then mysteriously disappeared. And these people, unfortunately, mysteriously disappeared too because there is no evidence of them. The first any Caucasians in Americas were Vikings. And as you know, Dr. Winters, you wrote a little something in my foreword, the book about this. His claim to fame was that these whites or Caucasian Vikings or whatever came over and built mounds in North America, which is not true. Also, there's no such thing as Indian mounds because they didn't build them either. The Africans built these mounds. They were the mound building society, or the ancient mound builders. And the part that you interested me about was that the second point that he had in his books, American BC, and talked about the different writings that he said that the Vikings made, and they did not make them. Those were African writings that you wrote about in my foreword, talking about how it was the Africans from Central America who went up there and made these writings. So there is no evidence of the Vikings being in North America before 1000 BC.
Okay. In the time you're
sorry, 1000 AD. Excuse me, I'm very sorry. It's 2,000 years later. 1000 AD. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great. Your title, The First Americans or Africans as Documented Evidence. What do you mean when you say documented evidence?
Okay, I went to the Smithsonian because to get some more information, and because in the last 10 years, I've always been interested in the Indians and where they came from, and I always ask them where they came from, and they always say, well, we've always been here. So I went to the Smithsonian, and on a day that they were having a speaker, a Native American, so-called Native American speaking, and my wife asked him where the Native Americans originated. And I was videotaping, not audio, but video and audio taping. And he said, quote, "We came from the rocks, we came from the earth, we came from the rivers, we came from underneath the oceans, we came from the heavens. We came from all these places, and you must have faith that we came from these places, just as the Christians have faith in their stories." Well, my evidence comes from skulls, skeletons, footprints in lava, 30,000 years old, campsites, 60,000 years or older, genetic evidence, linguistics, paintings, tools, carving, architecture, Egyptian writing, the artifacts, and some of their structures. So I think that kind of trumps what he was talking about.
Okay, right now we're going to take a short break, and we're going to have an musical interlude, and they're going to have a few commercials. And then, Dr. Hotep, I hope you'll just relax in the studio, and I'll be getting right back to you.
It'll be fine.
The African History Notebook.
Welcome back to the African History Notebook. I'm your host, Dr. Clyde Winters, and tonight I have a real treat, a very exciting writer and researcher, Dr. David Imhotep, PhD, and I can tell you that it's not easy to get a PhD, so I'm excited to talk to that. Dr. Imhotep, you know, I was looking at the first Americans were Africans, documented evidence, and it's a very interesting cover. Who did that cover, or why did you make that cover for your book?
I made the cover. What the cover is, for those who can't see it, you can go to historictruth.info and see it. It's a picture of a black man. He looks like a brother out of Watts or out of New York City. However, it's a picture of the very first picture of a real, actual Native American that was taken in 1850 or 1872 or 3. It was part of the HMS Challenger, which is a boat that came from England going to passing by South America and going up into the Pacific, and they stopped at the tip of South America at Tierra del Fuego to fuel up with wood and food and water, and they
instead of saying the so-called Native Americans, you know, the Woo Indians, black people, and they took a picture of him. And that picture of him hangs now today in the museum, Natural History Museum of London.
Oh wow, that's exciting, man. Because now you wouldn't think that it was black people down that far in South America near the South Pole. You know, the book is full of so many interesting things, and it's I'd like to know what was the hardest part of writing the book? What was the most part in terms of organizing it, or what did you find most shocking?
Well, not most shocking, but the hardest part was the research. The second hardest part was finding a good editor, a great editor, which I still haven't found. But I wanted to mention one thing that would drive people to say, well, what the heck happened if the first people in America were blacks? Where'd the Indians come from? Well, my evidence is that black folks have been coming here for 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100,000 years. But the hard evidence, I have hard evidence of them coming over at least 60,000 years ago. Now, the first Asians, which we are taught are the first people in the Americas, don't come over. There is no evidence of them, skulls or skeletons or anything like that, until 3000 BC. So for almost 55,000 years, Africans were the first people and the only people in all three Americas. So around 3000 BC, these Mongolian Asians come in, and they start killing the people, taking their land, but also a little bit of miscegenating going on. That's race mixing, so-called race mixing. This is why the Indians of today do not look exactly like the Asians or the Chinese. They look different. They're taller. Their faces are thinner. They don't have the big round brachiocephalic face. They have the dorsal skull, the longer skull, and their hair isn't silky and straight. It's a little. Sometimes it's curly, but it's definitely like horses' hair. It's a little more rough. And so this is what happened. Those are the two first mixtures, and then far later on, we have the Chinese come in, and we have the whites come in.
Did you learn anything from writing the first Americans or Africans documented evidence that you didn't know? Was there anything that you learned from writing the book?
Yes, I learned that history is not telling the truth. That's why I'm telling the historic truth and giving the historic truth.
HistoricTruth.info is my website, and I found that the history of the Western Hemisphere has got to west and from the east.
That sounds good. Dr. Imhotep, could you kind of mention that website again?
Yes. Historic Truth is one word. Historic, HISTORIC.info.
And also with Facebook, Dr. David Imhotep, and along with your other friends, so we can get this information out. Also, I will be starting once my second real copy of the book comes out. I will be lecturing in different places and will be welcoming lectures. The book with the real back, which is still not out right now. I have the old copy, but that'll be out in June, July.
I can't wait until that over. In your book, you mentioned these people 60,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago. Is there any relationship between the first African Americans and any contemporary Africans? Is there any groups that relate to these early Americans?
Well, I know you're smiling as you asked that question, because you gave me the answer to that. That is the Khoisan. The Khoisan people have a direct genetic link to the people in the Americas, specifically in the
That's the tip of South America.
That was the Khoisan of today. The people, the short people in the Kalahari Desert, for those who don't know. I'm sorry.
Sorry, but you also mentioned the Twa. What about these Twa people?
So the Twa I knew are the forefathers of the Khoisan. The Twa I knew are, of course, part of the first people who came over here. And they come over in the reed boats. The boats are really something about the reed boats. You can find these reed boats on the temples of the Egyptians in the Nile Valley, and you will find people in Lake Chad today building them. But also, which is really riveting, the same exact design is still being used today in Lake Titicaca in South America. So that shows
really.
Yes, that shows you. Yes, that shows you that the first people came in these reed boats, and they have been building them since time immemorial in these two places. Columbus did not come in a reed.
You know, that's very interesting, because I know that Heyerdahl came in a reed boat, and he had Africans and people in America work on those boats. I read a lot of books about blacks in ancient America. You know, my favorite is the Mandi. We heard about the Egyptians. But what I found very interesting about your research, Dr. Imhotep, is that you discussed the Algonquin Indians. And, why are the Algonquin Indians so important to in understanding Africans in early America?
Well, the Algonquins were the first large group in the Indians in North America. And there's a book called The Red Record, where the Indians the Red Record is a book of not ancient, but Indian writings that go back about 100 years that had been passed down through the centuries. Yes, they used to write. They had writing. They had several different languages, and some of it was Egyptian. The Red Record talks about how they came across from Asia. Now, the first Algonquins were undoubtedly the Africans, and they mixed with these Asians, these two different groups of Asians, which I talk about in my book, which also is part of the Red Record. But they mix with the Asians, and they make the Algonquins, which is the first large Indian group. And one of the Algonquin, several of the Algonquin groups, but especially the Mi'kmaq, are the ones who used to write in hieroglyphics, in Egyptian hieroglyphics, from top to bottom and from right to left. Egyptian Medu Neter. So this is what's so important about the Algonquins. Also, the Algonquins are the two different parts of Algonquins are some of the few Indians, and there's one or two others that don't say we always have been here. They talk about their journey from across the Atlantic Ocean.
And there's also one that talks about the journeys across the Atlantic Ocean, who is found in California.
That's very interesting. I mentioned the Egyptians. Is there a lot of evidence of Egyptians in ancient America?
There is so much information that I could spend the next 2 to 3 hours talking about it. But just to give you a brief out of them, they built the Bimini Road. They built several things in Cuba, in the Caribbean. They have pyramids and temples that they built in North America, Central America, as well as South America. They have temples of the different things that the Native Americans, the first Americans, I would say, the Africans, have in common with Egypt is that all over the Americas there are things they could quote temples of the sun, literally in Central and South America. There's numerous mummies in South America. The Incas in South America have a meteor man like the Egyptians. They had astronomer priests. They had priests wearing leopard skins or spotted animal skins. They had a quest for immortality of the soul. They had many identical religious practices, too many to mention. They had architecture, especially building with megalithic blocks. Those are very large blocks, the largest over 200 tons. And the three rows of megalithic walls near Cusco in Peru, where they have these gigantic walls with blocks over 200. One of the blocks is 300 tons, and you can't stick a knife in between the stones, which is very similar to what the Egyptian walls and some of their stones. You have the metal clamps that hold those two together, and in the Tiahuanaco, where a lot of these ancient buildings and ruins can be found, is documented to be 12,000 years old. Now, they say that's earlier in Egypt. That's crazy. These are the people who were from the Nile Valley. So this is another thing that shows you the people of the Nile Valley go back far before 3000 B.C., or even their children who came over here, who built Tiahuanaco 12,000 B.C. We're talking about people from Naphtali, for example, where Dr. What's his name? Thomas Brophy found different Stonehenge. He dug down 12 feet into the desert sand, and he found a map of our universe, okay? Our Milky Way universe, as it was seen from the galactic center 17,000 years ago. And he says their civilization goes back 17 to 40,000 years ago. So people, not only are we talking about the first people in Americans can go back farther than we're being told, but my dissertation talks about how the people in the Nile Valley go back farther than we are being told as well. Do you have any time to talk about the international trade these people were doing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Their international trade, this Bimini Road, it was called that by the Indians because they looked down in the water about 20 feet deep off of Bimini, about a mile out off of Bimini. It looked like a road because there's gigantic blocks there, but actually what they were it was blocks all right, but it was a breakwater. You see, at one time the Earth went through an ice age. When the ice age hit, the Atlantic, the Arctic North Pole reset itself from where it is now on an ice island over top of Canada, over top of Canada. And because of that, since all that ice melted, we have a flood, okay? We've heard about a flood, but that was back 110,000 years ago. That was one of the other floods, not the last flood. But they reformed as a iceberg, if you will, on top of land, which was it reformed on top of Canada. So it's just like if you have a glass of water, and the water in the glass represents the oceans of the world, and the ice represents the Arctic Circle, which is filled with a gigantic block of the North Pole. Well, if you take that ice out of
the glass and set it down on the table, the level of the water in the glass will go down. That's the same thing that happened on this planet. The level of water went down from 110,000 years to the end of the ice age about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago. So the ocean level went down, which means the land swelled. So the Bahamian Islands, there are maps of the Bahamian Islands that you can get, and you'll see the islands that are now there are salmon colored. They're small islands, but around the salmon colored islands there's a light blue, which represents the Bimini Bank, and then you have the dark blue water, which is the ocean of today. Well, the Bimini Bank was one very large island, okay? And off of there was connected to that was the Bimini Road, which was a breakwater, a 600-yard long breakwater, and behind it, connecting about 50 yards behind it, was a pier. The reason they built that breakwater was to break the water so that their large ships that were conducting international trade between Africa and North, Central, and South America would not go up and down on the ebb tide of the waves, so it would just stay straight. Now, they were going up to Canada. They were collecting furs and whatnot from Canada and North America. In the Great Lakes, there was an island. They took 500 tons of copper, and on that island you can still see the copper mines today. From the Americas, they had furs and whatnot. From Central America, they were taking rubber from the Olmecs. They traded with silver and gold. And then from South America, there were many things, and some of those things were coca leaves, which they made cocaine out of to do dental surgery to numb the teeth, and also tobacco. And all those things, especially the last two, prove the prima facie evidence that the Americas, the ancient people in the Americas, were trading with the Africa. So what they would do was they would take that 3-week or 4-week trip across the waves. They would get tired, and they would rest and recuperate in the Bahamas, and then someone in the Bahamas would say, okay, this ship goes to trade with North America. This ship goes to trade with Central America. This ship goes to trade with South America. And the products that they were trading, the undisputed products we have that they were importing from Africa into the Americas were the banana, plantain, sorghum, yams, sweet potatoes, high-bred jack beans, the peanut, the bottle gourd, and lion skins. And in the opposite direction, from America to Africa, they were taking back corn, copper, cotton, tobacco, cocaine, silver, and animal furs, and rubber. So I'm telling you that there was a gigantic ancient civilization before the last flood. There was an ancient civilization that they write about, the Noah's Ark and all that story. This is the flood that we're talking about that flooded and that killed the ancient civilization. It's called Zep-Tepi. It was a worldwide civilization started out of the Nile, went out to the world.
Okay, so we can read more about that in your... Yes, you can, and you can get that book at historictruth.info. You can get the copy today, or you can wait until June or July and get the new copy. They had the same, the copies, they had the same interior, the only difference is the cover.
Okay, sounds great. I don't know if maybe the engineer can look and see if there's any people on the line that may ask a question. Is there anybody out there that may want to ask a question on the line? Want to ask Dr. Imhotep a question?
There's none right now, but we can, for those who are listening in and ask questions of the guests and the host, please do give a call at 347-633-9561. So a call at 347-633-9561, and when you do call in, press the number 1 on your dial once you're there, and I'll know that you are looking to make a question or a comment, and we'll bring you in.
Dr. Imhotep, after writing the book and doing all this research, is there anything that you would change in the book?
Is there anything that would change?
Yes.
I would lengthen the part I wrote about South America, which I forgot that I am doing that. That will be in the new copy. I will be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some more things that were in South America, but it won't be much more than a paragraph or two, because the emphasis is on North America.
Do you have anything specific that you want to say to the listeners about your book or any of your other research?
About actually not necessarily about my book, but you must understand that we have been given inaccurate information from the textbooks and the TV programs. You know, there's no mention of Africans coming even before Columbus. All of these books and whatnot are talking about how the first Africans in America were brought here as slaves. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay? These people had incredible civilizations. They had civilizations that had long canals, and this is in North America I'm talking about. They had canals 75 miles long, canals that they would put the boats in and do trading with different peoples in the Americas. They had roads going next to the canal. In some cases, where they actually wrote in different languages. They had higher math and astronomy, as can be seen in some of their mounds. There is a book that is put out by Dr. Greg Little, and he has a picture in there of America as it was seen in the 1800s, the late 1800s. And Cyrus Thomas, who was the head of the North American section of the Smithsonian at that time, charted out, and he showed in the Eastern America there were over 100,000 mounds. Today there's 100 million mounds. Today there's only 100,000 remaining. Now these mounds, as he said, were not built by the American Indian. Now this is a white fellow from the Smithsonian Institute back in the late 1800s, telling you that the Indians did not make these mounds. Yet we go on from time immemorial, from that time immemorial, till now, we're thinking that they did. Some of these mounds, and this is a real picture, and I wrote about it, I even have a picture in the book, and that is about some of these mounds, especially the ones around the Ohio River. There are 5 or 6 or 7 of them. They did excavations. They found that inside the mound, they had iron smelting furnaces. In other words, they were making iron. This is before Columbus, before the Vikings. Okay, they were making iron. They even found a spear point and a shovel and a pick made of iron. This is ancient times in America, folks. This is incredible information. They had cotton. Some of the Indians had cotton clothes. They found they were repairing teeth with metal cap, which is like modern bridge work. They did not all live in teepees. Some of them had buildings. Matter of fact, I showed, as you have shown, Dr. Winters, that the buildings that the Pueblo built, the so-called Pueblo Indians built in South America on my lecture tours that I give about the first Americans, where their buildings are identical to the ones in Mali that were built by the short people. The Dogon came in after these short people had built those buildings and took them over, but there is nowhere else in the world that we know of that had buildings that are built inside a cliff with that type of architecture. And there are only 2 places, and that is in Mali and also in the southwestern 4 corners of the so-called 4 corners of the United States. So these people were not people who just ran after buffaloes and were hunter-gatherers. I mean, how in the world did the first immigrants, the Pilgrims, make it through their first winter? The Indians brought them food, corn and other food that they had grown. My God, we have been sold a bill of goods.
Dr. Imhotep, could you give us that website again and tell the listeners where they can order your book?
Yes. They can go to historictruth.info and order my book. That's HISTORICTRUTH.info and order my book. And through there you can communicate with me and book me for any speaking engagements, in which I will bring my 157 slide presentation showing all the evidence that I've gathered.
Thank you very much, Dr. Imhotep. Listeners, be sure to tune into the African History Notebook radio program every Tuesday evening from 9 to 10 p.m. Also, be sure to visit our archives and listen to our earlier broadcasts. For details on upcoming episodes of the African History Notebook, visit my website, omeg98.net/historynotes3.htm. To purchase copies of my books, you can go to the website www.hulu.com/c-winters. The African History Notebook